Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. It's Paulie Esther here, and today I want to talk about the demise of Project T. Some of you know what I'm talking about, some of you don't know what I'm talking about. We're going to go ahead and get into this. So last week, Behaviour Interactive put out this announcement here to our community. When we conceptualized Project T, we wanted to have players involved in it as early as possible, which led to the creation of the Insiders program. This approach has allowed us to get very early validation on the project's core design and gameplay, which is something that often comes much further into the production of a game. Following the playtest in July, we ran a thorough internal risk assessment from a product and commercial perspective, and while a number of the players expressed appreciation for what they played, I'm one of those. Unfortunately, the outcome of this deep analysis yielded unsatisfactory overall results. It's with a heavy heart that we announce that Project T has been canceled, and we want to thank you for your support through this journey. So now, I don't know if you remember from the anniversary live stream, they showcased this video as part of the expansion of the world of Dead by Daylight in what was going to be called Project T, which was being worked on by this studio, Midwinter Entertainment, which is a subsidiary of Behaviour. They wound up buying this studio back in 2022, I believe. And so this was going to be like Dead by Daylight adjacent game in which you played as one of a crew of trespassers who would fight these enemies called the Thrall in the what they called the backwater, which was, you know, basically a swamp type area with an open world. And it really gave me some Left 4 Dead vibes. And, you know, I took part in the playtest. Everything was under embargo, so I wasn't able to record, screenshot anything. It was all super secret for anybody who was in that Insiders playtest group there. And I was happy to have had the chance to play it. I don't know if it would have been a banger or not. You know, I could see that it was in the vein of that Left 4 Dead type experience. And I like the story and the missions. It was in alpha when I played it, and it was honestly really polished for alpha, but we're in a very risk-averse environment in gaming right now. And so I think ultimately what they decided was that they were going to shut it down and not take a risk. We've seen Behaviour doing a few of these other games, some connected to Dead by Daylight, like Hooked on You, some not connected to Dead by Daylight at all, like Islands of Insight. They've gone through a few iterations on these, and they haven't really, to be honest, come up with any hits. I think probably Hooked on You did okay. I don't know for sure, but Islands of Insight doesn't seem to be grabbing people. Flippin' Misfits seems like it was dead on arrival when that one came out. Meet Your Maker seems to be floundering, and we went through two different iterations of Death Garden. We had Death Garden, and then they folded it, and then they tried to resurrect it with what I believe was probably a sunk cost fallacy, that they had probably put so much money into Death Garden that they wanted to try and take another kick at the can and make it work rather than scrap the whole thing. But I think now we're in an environment where Dead by Daylight, let's face it, is the cash cow for the company, and we're reaching the point where they're not able to absorb these losses being poured into the development of these games that aren't hitting, like Death Garden and Meet Your Maker and things like that. And so they took this risk analysis approach towards Project T, and they decided it was too risky to continue to funnel money into this project with, you know, no, according to their analysis, no real hope of it being a commercial success. Like, I always thought that, you know, with Meet Your Maker and these things, that they had these crossover cosmetics. They say if you buy this game, you're going to get cosmetics and DBD. So you kind of had like your fan base to fall back on, where you could get kind of guaranteed sales from this. But even with that, they just decided that it's a no-go. It's a no-go, and they have scrapped it. Now, not only that, they haven't just scrapped the project. What I also found out is that they shut down the whole company. That studio that they purchased, they shut the whole thing down. Not just not just what they were working on. Update, Behaviour Interactive confirms it has shut down Midwinter Entertainment. My time with Midwinter Entertainment has come to an abrupt end due to the studio closure. A company spokesperson gave the following statement in relation to the original story. Yesterday, Behaviour Interactive announced the cancellation of Project T and the closure of its Midwinter studio in Seattle. The decision was taken following a diligent risk assessment from a commercial and product perspective, which yielded unsatisfactory results. This sad news in no way reflects the talent of the team who put a lot of energy into Project T. All the employees were offered to relocate to our Canadian studios, as we strongly believe in their expertise. Should they decide not to accept, they will be presented with a generous severance package, and we want to thank them for all their hard work on Project T and wish them the best in the future. So there was the original story. Midwinter Entertainment, the Behaviour Interactive subsidiary behind Dead by Daylight spinoff Project T, has reportedly been shuttered. In a statement shared yesterday, Behaviour confirmed Project T has been cancelled following a playtest and analysis that yielded unsatisfactory results. Was I the only one that liked the playtest? Maybe so. I don't know. I'm pretty easy to please. Now, multiple people who worked on Project T claim Midwinter has been shut down as a result of the cancellation. Sadly, after nearly 7 years, my time at Midwinter Entertainment has come to an abrupt end due to the studio closure, wrote one former Midwinter developer on LinkedIn. Midwinter has been an amazing place to work with a group of amazingly talented, wonderful people. Another person who provided audio support on Project T explained that after 4 years, the studio I have been working with on multiple titles shut down. They subsequently named Midwinter and called it a great place to work. Notably, they also challenged Behaviour's assessment of Project T. One of the crazy things is that in the most recent playtest, we got a 92 out of 100 score in fun and playability. Wow, I didn't read this part. This was updated since I looked at this last. And it is being sold that the game was not liked by the players, they added. Behaviour's statement doesn't mention Midwinter, but acknowledges a number of players expressed appreciation of what they played. Despite that positive feedback, Behaviour noted concerns about the title's commercial perspective. I mean, they might be looking at things like Back 4 Blood and stuff like that and just thinking, maybe the time has passed for this genre of game and they didn't want to take the risk. I don't know. I did have fun, and like I said, it was an alpha, so I wasn't expecting much, but I thought it was very well polished. So you had to go on this mission, and I think I played for like 3 hours, and it was the same mission over and over again because, you know, they haven't fleshed out the whole story in subsequent missions. So we just played the same mission over and over again to just kind of get a feel for the game. But it was fun nonetheless. So I don't know. What are you going to do? It's a very difficult time across the board for anybody. This wouldn't be the first time Behaviour has cut jobs. In 2024, the company laid off under 3% of the workforce in January before making 95 people redundant in June. So I think it was like something like 45 people in January, 95 people in June, and I believe Midwinter Entertainment Studio is another 37 employees there. Behaviour attributed those cuts to the need for a strategic corporate change that would allow it to focus on its historical strengths. The publisher recently released The Casting of Frank Stone, an interactive horror title from Supermassive Games set in the world of Dead by Daylight. It's unclear how well that performed. Now, that is a key piece of information here. The game developer has reached out to Behaviour for comment. So, how's Frank Stone performing? I'm not sure. I was looking at the Steam charts, and it looked like it's, had the player base peaks of about half of some of the other games that Supermassive has put out. Like a third of maybe of The Quarry. So I don't know if that game's resonating, if that game is considered a success or not. That may have been one of the factors that made Behaviour pump the brakes on releasing Dead by Daylight adjacent content anymore. If The Casting of Frank Stone is underperforming, that could be a factor that would get the plug pulled on Project T, which I'm assuming was like, maybe another year away. It was in alpha, so there was a lot more work to be done on it. So this is the nature of the industry right now. The video game industry had a big boom during the pandemic, and Lots of people were stuck at home. Lots of people were gaming. Now, with inflation, as well as people going back out into the regular world, we have two things that are just eroding gamer culture, right? And we've seen a lot of layoffs, and nobody has been exempt from that. I personally thought, wow, Behavior's in a really good, solid place here, because they were picking up studios when people were folding, people were firing people. Behavior was out there picking up studios. So let's see here. We had this one. This is when they acquired Midwinter, the one that's folded now, May 2022. That's the people who are working on Project T. They bought that one in May 2022, but that's not all. Then they bought this studio here, Sock Monkey Studios, in what they call their UK North, Behaviour UK North. They bought this one in the UK, and that was February 2023. Then, later on in the year, they bought Antimatter Games, what they call UK South, this studio here. This was in July. They bought another game studio here, right? And after that, they bought one in the Netherlands. They bought Code Glue. So they were picking up all of these studios through summer of 2023. And I thought, well, they must be really doing well, flush from Dead by Daylight cash to pick up all these studios when everybody else is struggling. But, then, everything came home to roost, and we had the subsequent layoffs, January, June, and now this. So, I had fun with it. I'd like to see the characters salvaged in some way, but I remember going through this with Death Guard and talking about salvaging some of the characters, and that never happened. It'd be unlikely that this would happen too. So this is somebody archived the stuff from the Project T website here. Meet the trespassers. Not many are brave or crazy enough to willingly face the thrall in combat. You've met some of our roster already, but how well do you really know them? If you're facing certain death together, you should probably know a little bit more than just their name. So these are the trespassers. These are who you would play in game versus the thrall. Jackie DeAngelis, born in Camden, New Jersey, 49, a bone-headed low-level Jersey gangster and mechanic, full of big ideas and short on ability. He ends up solving most problems with blunt force trauma. Has he figured out he's not smart enough to climb the crime family ladder? Nah, he'll talk fast and tough to drown out those thoughts from reaching him. Traits: dense, gutsy, opinionated, and untrusting. I carried all yous, but I'm not hearing any thank yous. These squeaky clean morals of yours are going to get us killed. So all the characters had voice lines when we played through this. They would talk to one another when you were nearby. They had this repetition of dialogue of things that they would say. And I can't remember if this was part of it. I carried all yous, but I'm not hearing any thank yous. Can't remember if that was one of the lines or not. But they would have these lines that they would say to one another. And the thing that kept resonating through my mind when I played this game was that the voice for this Jackie character, he sounded exactly like the person who voices Barry Wheeler in Alan Wake. And I was like, gosh, this voice sounds so familiar to me. Where do I know it from? I'm like, oh, this is like Barry. And it made me think, I wonder if they got the voice actor for Barry, and maybe Barry's coming as DLC for Alan Wake based on this voice. But, that's just me thinking he's a sound-alike to Barry Wheeler. So I don't know. It was just one thing I got from playing the game. Next we have, there's his character model. Next we have Willa Bradovich from the Kingdom of Hungary, age 18, a mysterious anomaly among the trespassers. Willa claims to be from a feudal clan of peasants pledged to an impossibly old noble family. To her, communing with otherworldly forces and dabbling in dark arts would not be unheard of. What's baffling is everyone else's ignorance of it. Her traits are that she's twisted, analytical, impatient, and composed, and her quotes are, "To die in this realm would be an honor. There are many kinds of sacrifices and rituals. For instance, cutting out still-beating heart is different than peeling face from screaming subject." So yeah, she had a thick accent in-game. That's one thing I remember. And then finally, we had Virgil Fontenot from Marion, Louisiana, age 41. Virgil's a gritty, resourceful smuggler from Bayou country who is comfortable in the wild with a long gun. Nonetheless, he is actually aware of the severity and insanity of the situation in which he's found himself, and tends to become irritated with others when they aren't as singularly focused as he is. Traits: rugged, methodical, poised, and stoic. Quotes: every time I've looked death in the eyes, he's blinked first. And got blood and guts here. Doesn't look like one of ours. So he had like a, a Bayou Cajun type accent from what I remember. So those are your three trespassers from the game. And I guess they had, planned on making a fourth, because you would go in as a team of 4, but we just wound up having a duplicate whenever we played on the alpha. What's that? Shrieks from the darkness, the sound of 100 unseen threats rushing in your direction. The Thrall have arrived. This unique and fascinating species has many faces, each more terrible than the last. Beware, the longer you trespass in their world, the more powerful and vicious they become. How greedy will you be? Spill as much blood as you can. Stop at nothing to make it back alive. So it was a good game, in my opinion, but obviously we're in a risk-averse situation in gaming. I mean, the same thing goes on in Hollywood. They just want to do remakes, prequels, sequels, known properties. Nobody wants to take a chance on unknown stuff, right? So that attitude is trickling into gaming right now. It's upsetting that Project T isn't going to see the light of day. Could they repurpose it and make like the Thrall, which was a variety of different monsters that you would face, similar to like Left 4 Dead, as a chapter in DBD? I don't know. We ever see these characters come into DBD as survivors? I don't know, but I sure would like it. So the other thing that was kind of a stunner to put a cap on this story that I was putting together was today Dead by Daylight announced that they have acquired a new studio, which I'm like, what? You just closed the studio? What do you mean you acquired a new studio? What is going on? So they had this announcement here. The way is lit. The path is clear. Today, we're ecstatic to announce our acquisition of Red Hook Studios. Darkest Dungeon has long been a series we've admired, enjoyed, and maybe even lost a little sleep over as fans. And the opportunity to welcome Red Hook as a fully independent studio under the Behaviour banner is nothing short of a thrill. We look forward to supporting Red Hook as they continue to do what they do best. Put your sanity to the test. Red Hook Studio. So I think everybody was a little stunned by this, because we thought that they are in the mode to, become smaller. But then they wound up buying this. And everybody was going, what's going on here? So then they had this other article from Game Developer again that shed a little bit more light on the thinking process for this acquisition. Behaviour Interactive CEO says Red Hook Studios acquisition helps both companies reduce risk. We already know that they're risk averse, right? That was the whole reason why they shut down Project T in Midwinter. Both Red Hook Studios leadership and Behaviour Interactive CEO Remy Racine see this acquisition as a move that creates stability in troubled times. At a glance, Behaviour Interactive purchased Red Hook Studios days after shutting down Midwinter Entertainment and canceling Project T. Red Hook Studios will now make Darkest Dungeon under the Behaviour Interactive banner. The transaction happened in parallel to Behaviour's closure and layoffs as part of a strategy shift for the publisher. Okay, I have some thoughts on this, but let's go ahead and read through this first. After a year of laying off developers, Behaviour Interactive is bringing some new ones into the fold. The Dead by Daylight developer publisher announced today that it is acquiring Red Hook Studios, the company behind Darkest Dungeon and Darkest Dungeon 2. It's incredibly rare for a game studio to announce an acquisition like this so soon after a year of layoffs and studio closures. So rare, in fact, that the only comparable example feels like Activision Blizzard's establishment of the Polish game studio Elsewhere in May 2024, while the parent company Microsoft axed jobs across the company. This news may be bittersweet for plenty of the game development community. On the one hand, the Red Hook acquisition looks to be a coup for both companies. On the other hand, so many developers lost work and an entire studio was closed down on the road here. In an interview with game developer Red Hook Studios co-founders Tyler Sigmund and Chris Bourassa, joined by Behaviour Interactive CEO Remy Racine, explained why both parties pursued this transaction. For Red Hook, it was a chance for stability that would fuel bigger and loftier dreams, and according to Racine, it is a move that helps Behaviour reduce risk as it finalizes its ongoing strategy shift. Reconciling Behaviour studio closures and layoffs with a new acquisition. For Behaviour, it seems that this was a culmination of a shift in strategy, taking it away from publishing games like Islands of Insight and into a future where it solely focuses on the horror genre. That strategy shift came with internal restructuring, driving the layoffs that took place earlier in the year. Behaviour Interactive Chief Product and Technical Officer Stephen Mulrooney told game developer that during that process, the company determined that it had too many employees to support that shift and that some of the affected workers didn't have the skills needed to support the new direction. As for the fate of Midwinter Entertainment, Racine repeated the explanation given by Behaviour last week, which was that Project T, the game Midwinter was working on, didn't have a chance of succeeding in today's market. He said that canceling the game meant there was no other work for the studio as a whole to take on. Workers at Midwinter were offered relocation opportunities for matching roles at Behaviour's Canadian offices. Some might wonder if Racine and Behaviour Management knew the Red Hook acquisition was impending, and why not hold on to this team to support Red Hook in the future? Because Red Hook is in Vancouver, right? And Midwinter is in Seattle. So it's kind of close. You could have maybe relocated those people. So I don't know. The transaction is today. Midwinter is yesterday, Racine replied, explaining that the timing of both decisions didn't offer a window for the Midwinter team to start supporting developers at Red Hook. He said Behaviour would had to keep the studio running for a year or more without a dedicated project before any opportunity to bring the two teams together could have emerged. Behaviour's planned publishing shift sent the company looking for what Racine called great horror IPs, which is what brought it and the Red Hook Studios team together around March 2024. We want to make horror gaming bigger, Mulrooney said. He expressed excitement about Red Hook Studios' experience with early access development, which may indicate Behaviour is planning to explore similar territory with its future games. It's not just Behaviour that wants to go bigger and bolder with the blood-soaked genre. Bourassa and Sigmund told the game developer that they wanted Behaviour's backing to make Darkest Dungeon an even bigger franchise. Red Hook Studios says acquisition provides stability for studio planning. Hearing about people losing their jobs is never pleasant, Bourassa said when we asked how he and Sigmund felt watching the layoffs and closures take place as the deal proceeded. Can you imagine that? Hey, everybody! Red Hook gang, gather around. We've been acquired. Yay! Who bought us? Behaviour. Oh, the people who just closed the studio last week. But it was the stability that so many of their peers lacked that make them pursue it anyway. We felt like this was a chance to build a strong runway for a future title and to provide stability. Bourassa explained to game developer. He and Sigmund seemed eager to stress that this was not a purchase of last resort for the company, with the latter co-founder telling us that the company wasn't actively shopping around when Behaviour approached them earlier in the year. That's an interesting point here. It's like we weren't trying to sell it. They just came to us and said, hey, are you for sale? That's pretty interesting, honestly. It kind of makes me wonder if there might be other studios, if Behaviour is trying to, kind of corner the horror market. I don't know. I mean, you see like what, Ilphonic's doing with Ghostbusters and Killer Clowns and stuff, and obviously Gunn with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Would they be after either of those, or are those games like not as big of hits? Because Darkest Dungeon's a pretty big hit. We'll get to that in a minute. The two said it was a huge relief to tell their employees about the deal, as it was a rare moment where they couldn't be transparent with the Red Hook team about the company's future thanks to regulatory restrictions that come with acquisitions. They expressed frustration at how the game industry contraction of the last 2 years has ravaged studios they grew alongside in the 2010s. Bourassa name-dropped Armello, developer League of Geeks as being one of the pure studios that has faced the greatest impacts. Red Hook has stayed profitable during this time period. We feel fortunate to have threaded that needle, said Barasa. But Sigmund explained that being an independent studio left him and his co-founder weighing multiple options for what to do now that Darkest Dungeon 2 was out the door. Taking the deal would help narrow those options and hopefully propel the studio to chase its most ambitious ideas. What this does is set a clear path for the next X number of years, he said. The pair weren't eager to give up what those ambitions entailed, but when Barasa raised the idea of making Darkest Dungeon a franchise as big as Dragon Age, it helped put things in perspective. What is the future for Behaviour and Red Hook Studios? While Red Hook supports Darkest Dungeon 2 and starts preparing for its grand vision with little to no interference from Behaviour, apparently. Yeah, look, it looks like they just want to own it. They don't want to tell Red Hook what to do. We'll see. Sigmund said that the publisher doesn't want to change how we make games. What can developers expect from Behaviour? The answer is, of course, horror games, and apparently publishing even more horror games from external developers. In fact, Mulrooney pitched game developer readers, that's the people who wrote this article, working on horror games to reach out to the publisher to discuss future relationships. That's wild. Mulrooney, the person who works for Behaviour, said people working on horror games should reach out to Behaviour to discuss relationships. So they're looking for properties. They're maybe not necessarily interested in creating them their own anymore, like with Project T, but they're looking to acquire stuff. Despite the canceling of Project T, itself a horror-themed game, leaving us wondering what exactly made it such an ill fit for the publisher's new plans, Behaviour still has other Dead by Daylight spin-off projects in the works, and the company still sees it as a foundation for its horror ambitions, with Darkest Dungeon now shoring up that base. Having a second original successful title is appealing, said Racine. The CEO closed our conversation with what may have been a message for business partners or employees as much as it was for our readers. He said that reducing risk was an important goal for both Behaviour and Red Hook Studios, and that buying Red Hook Studios is reducing risk for Behaviour. His explanation certainly adds context to what has been going on at Behaviour for the last year. It paints a picture of a studio that embarked on one plan prior to the ongoing contraction and only saw losses if it stuck with that strategy going forward. That's a contrast to many other layoffs we saw this year, where companies watched their coffers empty out due to declining sales or projects canceled by partners. Behaviour and Red Hook both seem to have stayed in command of their fates through this process, being proactive instead of reactive in a time of turmoil. And for many, the tragedy then is that Behaviour chose to lay off so many on its path to planting a bigger flag in the horror genre. So yeah, that says a lot here at the end for me, is that they just said, you know, we're gonna cut and run. We're not gonna take a chance that we're gonna lose money, which, you know, could have led to maybe even more layoffs. So they just didn't want to take the risk. And again, a point to Hollywood, they want the proven winner, right? We got Darkest Dungeon 2, proven winner. So they want to have like two strong foundation games, two pillars that they can count on for presumably constant revenue between Darkest Dungeon as a flagship and Dead by Daylight as a flagship, and maybe others. I don't know. We'll see. But that's where we're at with this whole story right now. I don't know. Could anything come of this? Could the licensing arrangements that Dead by Daylight has help Darkest Dungeon in any way? I'm not really sure. Been a long time since I've played Darkest Dungeon or seen anybody play Darkest Dungeon. So that's where we're at on this whole story here. But make no mistake about it, Darkest Dungeon is a winner. I looked up, you know, estimated revenues on Steam, and it was something like $145 million that Red Hook made in sales on Steam for Darkest Dungeon 1. And they estimated that of like $145 million, that $45 million that would have been profit. So this, based on that, this couldn't have been a cheap studio to acquire. I don't think. I don't know. I'm not sure how it goes. I don't know what the numbers are in Darkest Dungeon 2. Are they going to have a Darkest Dungeon 3? I don't know. I don't know. But what's in it for Red Hook then? Well, if you are looking to make Darkest Dungeon 3 and you know it takes you like $100 million to get one of these games going with no real assurance that you're going to recoup that money on release, if you have Behaviour tapping you on the shoulder and they're willing to fund your next game you want to make, then there's no risk for you, right? So that minimizes Red Hook's risk if they have Behaviour funding what they're creating, and then Behaviour believes in them enough that whatever they make will be successful because they have this reputation with Darkest Dungeon 1 and Darkest Dungeon 2 that will carry them to guaranteed sales. So that's why it's supposed to be a no-risk play for both sides. How it's going to play out, I don't know. But anyway, this is an aside that kind of stunned me through the news that Project T was not going to make it. I mean, like I said, it's a bad situation for everybody. The industry's in contraction. I thought that Dead by Daylight Behaviour was bulletproof from that. Game after game that they've released that just hasn't captured the imagination of the gamers in the way that Dead by Daylight has. All these other kicks at the can that they've had to try and get something that resonates with people and coming up short is, in my view, just led to a lot of losses that the Dead by Daylight money has had to absorb, and they decided not to do that anymore. So the characters are cool and everything. Are they going to go anywhere? Probably never see them again. But anyway, it's just a video I wanted to make about the whole landscape of the entirety of what's going on with Behaviour and picking up studios, closing studios, layoffs and everything. And basically, I just wanted to share all this with you. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Let me know what you think about all of this. Were you somebody who did get to play Project T? Were you looking forward to Project T? And if you know what the staff are saying is true, is that it was rating 92 out of 100, you got to remember, like, that survey is people who are in the playtest, and they're probably going to skew their survey favorably if they want to play some more. So I don't know, but I did have fun. So that's all I can say is from my own experience. But would it have been something that I would have ditched Dead by Daylight for to play all the time? Probably not. Would I have dabbled in it? Yeah. I don't know. Probably would have played it more than Meet Your Maker, but is that enough? I don't know. All right, that's all I have for you today. As always, thank you so very much for watching. I appreciate the time you spend here with me on my channel. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, as it helps the channel a ton. And don't forget to take care of each other in and out of the fog, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.
It's a Gen Rush life for us. It's a Gen Rush life for us. Set a hiding, we do gens. Set a randoms, we got friends. It's a Gen Rush life.